Cheldelin Fell with International Grief Institute.
And I'm Angie Cartwright with National Grief Awareness Day.
Angie, it is so good to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Time. Yeah.
It's been a long time.
You look fabulous.
You do too. You do too.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that we've got a good show lined up for viewers tonight. And
yes.
But before we get going, I want to properly introduce ourselves. I'm the founding partner of the International Grief Institute and the creator of the award-winning Grief Diaries anthology series. I'm certified in critical incident stress management, and I'm a bereaved mother. Lost our 15-year-old daughter in a car accident in 2009. So Angie, how about you?
Oh goodness. I started National Grief Awareness Day in 2014 was our first time that we did it. But the backstory of that is I've had lots of losses in my life. And I had a baby sister that I found when I was 5 years old. And I woke my mom up to tell her that my sister Erica had passed. She was 11 months old. And I can still remember her. And, I'm going to be 49, but I can remember that as clear as day, those things and those times around that, area, that time in my life where,
how old were you?
I had a grieving mom there. What's that?
How old were you when you found Erica?
I was 5.
Wow.
And I remember peeking over the bassinet. She had been sick for a while, and my mom had taken her to the hospital and brought her home. And it had been 2 or 3 days. And so, that night she did rest. And, I know my mom got up with her a couple times and she was doing fine. But between that time and whenever I decided to wake up, at 5 years old, you get up, you get into things, you're, hyper aware probably. And so I just peeked over there and in my own, never had that experience before, knew that she was not there anymore. I knew it.
And I can't imagine what that would be like going through your 5-year-old head, but that was not the end of your losses.
No.
You endured more losses than most people do an entire lifetime. And in fact, that is one reason why you are my poster child for resilience and courage.
Thank you.
Because you have been through so much, yet look at you. You are tirelessly helping others, and you're working hard to bring grief out of the darkness into the light. And I just want to thank you for all that you do. Before we talk a little more about your story and National Grief Awareness Day, I've got a couple of announcements. International Grief Institute is hosting its next Certified Eye Care Specialist class beginning September 15th. And this is a 10-week class for people who have been through loss and they want to help others. It's an enhanced peer support grief training. Okay. And so if you're interested, people can go to internationalgriefinstitute.com/CIS to learn more about the course. It's for anyone. There's no prerequisites. The only thing is that you have to experience a loss prior. That's the only criteria there.
Right.
Because you have to know loss in its entirety. And then the education that the class provides gives you all the tools that you need to help others. And Angie, you and I have said over the years that helping others helps our own heart to heal.
That's right.
And that's
very empowering.
Very empowering, very empowering. The other thing too is we had a really cool development recently with the grief cruises. We were featured in a documentary that Reverend Richard, a UK celebrity who was one half of a band back in the 80s who had some top 10 hits and a #1 hit. He left the band to become a priest. So he went from pop star to priesthood. And in 2019, he lost his husband and who died from alcoholism. And so this documentary, this film crew followed his journey through grief. And the final statement of the documentary is he joined the grief cruises this last December. And as a clergy, he was able to perform his very first burial at sea, which was really, really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that will be coming to the U.S. soon. People in the U.K. can watch that now, but it was really, really cool. And for those people who want to join the next grief cruise, they can go to thegriefcruises.com and find out more about the next cruise in 2023. So.
Yeah.
really beautiful experience. So Angie, I want to go back to your story. You started with the loss of your 11-month-old sister. You had actually endured many different kinds of losses, loss of people you loved from death, as well
Yes.
as living losses. You were in foster care,
Mm-hmm.
things like that throughout your life. And your story is quite remarkable. And it was posted in Grief the Unspoken a couple weeks ago,
What's
I
that?
think. Your story was posted in Grief the Unspoken, I want to say a
Yes.
couple of weeks
Yes.
ago. So people can
Yes,
read your
something that
story.
you wrote for
Yeah.
me, and I thank you for that. And that's on. Tell them where they can get that. I'm terrible with addresses
Well,
and all that kind of stuff. So,
that's okay. The link is on Grief the Unspoken.
oh,
And
thank you. See how fast she is? Awesome.
and
You're
so
so
people can
fast.
read the story in its entirety
Thank you.
there. It's pretty remarkable. And but I want to go back to National Grief Awareness
Okay.
Day. You created, we call it NGAD for short. You
Yes.
created it from a very specific loss in your life. Tell us about that.
We lost our mother in 2010, and that's kind of when I started. And it was a unforeseen death. It wasn't something she chose to do. She was very young and traumatic for us. And so I found myself on this thing called social media. And I'd also kind of been trying to do a little therapy and things like that. And what I had found out, because in the past I had lost my husband in 1996, his name was Thomas. And he and I were in a terrible wreck, and he didn't survive. And so I remember the struggles then. So here I am back in 2010, and I'm trying to find my way, my air, just to breathe, just to breathe. And I really don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to see anybody. I don't feel like anybody's understanding me. And I thought, I saw a grief post one day on this thing called Facebook. And so I was like, whoa. And so I started looking at that stuff, and I thought, I need some people like that. So I think I talked on those pages a little bit, and I thought, well, I know some people. And so that group started out to be about 50 people. And then I went on to start a page called Grief the Unspoken, had many groups there. And then, in 2014, I said, it just was something that, people say that this stuff that we do is a calling, because, nobody says one day they wake up and say, I think I'm going to talk about grief every day and
Right.
death every day and those things. But I did, and I wanted to talk about it, and I was tired of not talking about it. And I knew that from a short experience going to a therapist office back before this started, that I'd been in that, it'd been like maybe a couple weeks. I don't know how long, because how blurry, and we're going to talk about how blurry we get when we were grieving. But here I am. I'm not too long out of my losses, and I lost my mother, and the therapist, not saying anything bad about her. It showed where we were then, and not everywhere, but where we were then. And she was like, so I tell her the whole story, and it was pretty bad. And I tell her, I tell them the story, and she looked at me, taking notes and stuff, and she turned around. She said, so, Angie, have you ever tried chanting? And that's like a form of meditation kind of thing.
Right.
And I kept myself from my mouth dropping, literally, because how can you take somebody who's in traumatic grief, traumatized, in the darkness, their world is flipped upside down, all those things. And they're barely able to get there. And they finally get there. It's a long way to that car. It's a long way from the bathroom to to even brush your teeth, versus from that couch to that car, to get in that parking lot, to get into that thing, to make that appointment. It's a long, long road. And I got there, and so when I walked out, I said, it hasn't changed a lot. And so I thought, what, that's the sign. And so it kind of, I talked to my family and things like that. And I said, there has to be a day, not a day to celebrate, not a day to remind us to grieve. We grieve every day. We do grief awareness every day. But a day that is serious, and it's about education and awareness. There is hope. So even in the seriousness, there's hope, I'm not saying that we're just going to, it's all sad. I'm just saying that there is hope. And Where hope started for me was doing the things that I was doing, which was starting to talk. But like, I wanted to talk to you before I get too far ahead about how we don't think well. I was having some problems before.
You know, that is one
brain.
of the
Remember, it's like grief brain. We used to talk about grief brain.
Yeah, brain fog, grief brain. And, you know, that's one of the things that people secretly suffer from because, you know, I remember when we lost our daughter, I don't remember the first 2.5 years. Literally, it's like 2.5 years from my world has evaporated.
Yeah.
And our oldest grandson was a toddler at the time, and I feel like I was robbed of 2.5 years of his toddlerhood because I just don't remember it. But grief brain is actually a very significant physiological process that goes on in the brain. And this is what I want people to know about it, because many people say, gosh, I can't remember anything. I lose my train of thought. I walk into a room and I can't remember why I walked in there. It's that short-term memory. And there is a reason behind it. You're not going crazy. You don't have dementia. It is because when we face trauma, okay, when we lose a loved one, our body engages in the fight, flight, or freeze syndrome. It is
every day.
An inherent mechanism that is built into our body that we can't control, right? So what happens when the fight, flight, or freeze syndrome kicks in, our brain is swamped with the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. And what happens when the brain becomes swamped with that, it triggers all those hormones to secrete into the body, right? And there's reasons behind it, because the adrenaline, for instance, will give you a quick burst of energy. If you need to run from a saber-toothed tiger, that adrenaline kicks in and gives you almost superhuman strength to do things that you would normally do, right? And so what happens, though, is it anesthetizes parts of the brain. There's a little part of the brain called the amygdala. We call it Amy for short. And Amy gets anesthetized, or Amy anesthetizes other parts of the brain, especially the frontal cortex. It includes critical thinking, problem solving, that kind of thing. And so you think about when we have that near miss, like running from a saber-toothed tiger, that is a short-term incident, but grief is a long-term incident. It's not something that swamps us for 30 seconds and then evaporates, right? So the brain keeps secreting all those stress hormones for months and months and sometimes years.
Yes.
And so it's not our fault that our brain isn't working right. When we're grieving, our brain is filled with stress hormones that anesthetize the critical thinking, problem solving, and instead we get like tunnel vision and time warp and that kind of thing. And so that is why we develop grief brain or grief fog.
Grief fog,
and many people don't realize it. It's not something that's in their control. It happens to all of us.
Exactly.
When the grief brain goes away, it's different for everyone. For some of us, it seems to be a permanent fixture.
I know that I too lost, and my friends have looked at me at times, and even my kids at times, and I'll say, I don't remember that, and one of my good friends, probably about 3 weeks ago, said, you don't remember doing, and it was a certain thing that was really important with a very important person in my life, and so I said, no, I don't remember those surrounding things. And so, and I knew I was traumatized from people who were, I was grieving the living, and so they were before me, but I do remember always feeling real cold, always ready, fast paced, going on all the time. But sometimes very sedentary, didn't want to go anywhere, but wanted, it was like this fight or flight, it was always on the go. And I was jumpy for a real long time, and I can still be that way. And so, and I know today that I'm grateful that I know what it is and I know what it isn't. And so I don't feel as crazy, even though I am crazy. And there's a difference. When you know you're crazy, you're just like, oh, okay, but
it does make us feel crazy.
Because I've been in the madness. I've been in madness, checking myself. Am I really? And I've been there many times.
Yeah.
And I've taken myself to the hospital before, or been taken to the hospital before. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm grateful for those places.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all there to help. We
That's
have
right.
quite a few
I see
going
that.
on, which
Yeah.
is awesome. So
Hi, everybody.
I want to answer one of these. Some of you have never heard of grief brain before, and what is it, and experiencing it. And then Sandy Day says, I've never heard of it. What are the symptoms? I'm losing my feed. So yeah, not sure about that. But if you're still with us, grief brain again is it's the stress hormones that have anesthetized part of our brain that, especially the part that involves critical thinking and problem solving and memory and that kind of thing. And so it causes us to forget things because it impacts our memory. It causes tunnel vision, time warp, that kind of thing. And for some people who are grieving, time seems to be moving really fast, where for other people who are grieving, it seems to be moving very slow. And sometimes it can go back and forth. So I hope
mine went back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know our youngest son, because our daughter who passed was just 18 months older than him, and he was 13 at the time that she died. He said, Mom, everything is just going so fast. Days are going so fast. And at the time, I didn't have an answer for him. But as I became certified in critical and stress management, I learned through that training about how the stress hormones affect the brain. And it's really important for people to know that because, again, it's so easy to think, oh my God, I've got dementia or I'm going crazy, and you're not. It's normal grief. So, and let's talk about some of the questions that people have. Why does grief feel so isolating?
It feels isolating. Well,
it is isolating. We feel
I do. I think, first of all, I have to always say this when that question's asked, or a question like that is asked. First of all, we all grieve differently. So the person asking that question, I'm going to try to answer that. But everybody's situation might be different. But I can agree. I had that happen for me on the traumatic losses. Isolation, there was a direct, like somebody, there was a line there, something, and somebody snapped it that fast. And all of a sudden, the world sounded way different. It was real quiet and eerie. People sounded like they were in tunnels and stuff like that. I was really freaking out a lot. And the only thing I did what I had to do for those next days at the service. But as soon as I could get, the faster I could get to, after I did what I needed to do and honor our mother, all I could think about was getting to the house and not going anywhere. I remember one day I was just like right up in the corner of the couch, like I was scared of something. And I don't, the only reason I remember that is because my husband at the time said, what are you doing? And I remember looking down, I was kind of on my feet and my knees on the couch. And I didn't realize I was doing that. Yeah. I think there's a couple things, a reason why we isolate. One of them is physical. The physical, like you talked about, the fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And the other one is grief. And trauma can be another one. But the bigger one I see too is you have it, the funeral happens, everyone is around and helps, and God bless them. They do have to go back to their lives. It's not their fault. Right. But we didn't have a society to know how to handle us. Right. For many years, and it's still not all the way there. But I have to say, there's a lot of grief educators out there today, and there's a lot of therapists that are starting to use the correct language and seeing that you don't just get over things. You don't tell somebody in therapy just to move on and get over it. I mean, telling somebody to get over their child, right, in therapy, I've heard that so many times. We still have a lot of work to do. But I know that if we go out into a society that doesn't know what to do with us, what do? We retreat and we go back home. And then what happens to me and what I've come to know, and I'm going to start talking about that this year, and I have talked about it, is silent grief happens. Yes. That's exactly, it's all correlated. It's all related to my experience, really. I mean, I'm not a doctor, and I've never said I was, but my experience was that. And so, people didn't know what to do with me. So then I go home, and if I try to reach out, it wasn't their fault. At first I was angry at them, because they were saying these things and all that. I'm like, how can you say that? That's so cruel. How can you tell a grieving mom that? how can, I mean, my mom got told those things, and I remember being little and listening to that. And today's her birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Mom in heaven.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah. So there's, we go into we finally like go to the, into that silence, and we start living two different lives by now. I made a decision one day and I said, that's it. I'm not talking to them people anymore, especially the ones that I'd asked the questions to. And I knew that there wasn't really anybody I could talk to, and therapy wasn't going well at all. And so I just decided to, and I didn't choose healthy things to do. I was drinking and doing things to cover up my pain.
Yep.
I'm not putting anybody down for that, because I had those experiences, and I lived in silent grief for many years, and it almost took my life.
Well, you know my story about my husband.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe they don't. Some do, some don't.
Most of the viewers don't. So less than 3 years after our 15-year-old daughter died, my husband, who was 46 at the time of the stroke, he suddenly had a massive stroke that left him disabled. And the doctors would say, oh my gosh, why did this happen to him? He's so young. He lost all his reading, his writing, his speech. He had no words at all. He was paralyzed right down the midline, his entire right side. And the doctors would say, he's so young. Why, and I said, I know exactly why. Grief.
Yeah.
And silent grief, you have said this many times, and it's so true. Silent grief is deadly grief.
Yes.
Because when we grieve in silence, that grief has nowhere to go.
No.
We have to externalize it.
We internalize
it. If we don't process it, it stays within our body, and it causes things like high blood pressure.
We get sick.
Our body just gets out of whack.
Yeah.
And that is why it's so important to talk about grief. And you were talking about how the pendulum is starting to swing a little bit in society.
We are on the edges, and I say it every year, but we're still on the edge of change. Because it's a big edge.
But that's why I was so grateful for that documentary.
Yeah.
And the documentary, they came out of the UK. Yeah. And, it's not wonderful. Something you see very often here in the US. And so they're now, shopping it to the US and such, which is fabulous. But the point being is that when a film crew realizes there is something here with following someone's grief journey, that's crucial.
Yes.
That raises awareness. Yes. And that's what we need to do to make change for future generations. So bless your heart for starting National Grief Awareness Day. It's important. It's critical. So, and I know that you chose August 30th because it's your mom's birthday.
Yeah, well, as all of us do, we want to offer our loved ones their legacy. We want them to, and we do legacies in all sorts of ways, and, to honor my mom's grief. And I know she's an angel and up there doing her little things, and sending us little signs. And I know she's up there having a good old birthday party, because she used to tell me about what heaven looked like, and I'd be like, really, Mom? And it would really get my attention, because it was just the way she talked about it. Her eyes would always light up, even if she was kind of sad. So it was really neat. And she gets to be with her daughter. Yeah. She gets to be with her brother who had taken his life.
Yeah, who died by suicide.
Her grandparents that raised her as parents, and I think about that because she did grieve for them. And so I do think that, and it didn't bring comfort at all for a while. I didn't want her up there. I wanted her here. Right. There's days I still want her here. I mean, but it's gotten to that for me, and, but this is, we decided, I said, what date, what day do you do on this? And, I think I looked the day up just to see, and I didn't see much. I think is it hot dog day today or something too, or something like that? I can't remember, but I will say this to everybody that is listening. I got so busy over the last, on this day, we get busy before it and of course after, but, so the next day, it's kind of a resting time, and I go over and I find things people have posted, and I try to find them and share them basically through the day, the next few days. And then I found out the next day is National Overdose Day.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that it's tomorrow.
Okay.
People check that out for me. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, but I'm pretty sure it is. And so, I felt like, I needed to prepare, and I do, so tomorrow I'm needing to pay attention to their awareness, and I'm going to share their things that they do. And, we've had that in our family. So I understand that real well. I've had friends that have, and, things like that. So that's something that I thought I'd let you know tonight.
Yeah. And I think, and I appreciate that, because loss by overdose is, a stigmatized death, and
Yes,
it
is.
shouldn't be, and it doesn't need to be. And
Yes.
People who lose a loved one by overdose, there's absolutely no shame in that. Addiction is a disease that they didn't choose
It's
to
a
have.
disease.
No one ever says when they're 5 years old they want to grow up to be an addict. No one hates the disease more than the addict. And so when we lose loved ones to alcoholism or addiction, there's a whole lot of stigma attached around it, and we need to remove that. And so bless your heart for putting out awareness tomorrow for National Overdose Day. I wish we didn't have to have that day either, but it does raise awareness.
But we do have it. Yes.
Yeah, it does help to talk about it. Shared sorrow is half a sorrow. That's a Finnish proverb.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why it's so important for us to talk about grief. And I know in today's society, when we lose a loved one, we can feel like a square peg in a round world. We just don't fit anymore. At least it feels like that.
I feel like I call it the grief word, because there's no other way to explain it. I didn't go there. I didn't go there until I lost somebody, or that I got broken.
Like a matrix. And so, it's really important that we talk about it. But Angie, I want to ask you, when you lost your mom, because that's the one that was your catalyst for starting National Grief Awareness Day.
Yes.
And creating Grief the Unspoken on Facebook and becoming the social media influencer that you are. What are some of the things that people said to you that unintentionally hurt?
As a grieving person, or as somebody doing this stuff?
As a grieving person.
Okay.
Like when your mom passed. What are some of the things?
Even, and she passed from an accidental overdose, is what they say, what they call it. So in other words, she did not intend to pass away, but she did, from what she took, and she had this disease. So, I'd run into some people even in, because I too, and, in recovery, and there's even stigma there. It's everywhere. And they would say things like, well, they knew what they should do. They should have called somebody, or they could have called this person before they, because it's always suggested to call before you, use or drink and things like that, or call a sponsor and do all those things. And the thing is, I can't go into where, the 12-step thing, but I will say that, a person who has, from my experience, a person who is there and they're going to relapse is already, the disease is back, and they have lost the power and choice to use. That's my experience, and I believe in that experience.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor or anything like that.
So what did you respond when people said things like that to you?
Well, it was at that time I was wearing hoodies, hiding out in the community still, not wanting to really visit with anybody. But when I started hearing things like, well, they knew and they should have this and they should have that. And then, one time I was trying to share about her. She was buried, she wanted to have the casket and all that. And we love snow. She loved snow. The first snow came, she passed in November, and I was all excited and I was telling people about it, and I didn't get happy very often. And then when it started happening, I started crying so hard. I did not expect that emotion. And where I went was she was in the ground. Spiritually, I believe different, but physically she was there, and I was under a blanket and I was struggling. So, you want to go out and that's there, it's that's built up in here, that pressure, that's what I went through last night. So somebody's going to ask me, how are you doing? How's things going? Well, in my world. So I went, okay, they're pretty cool. And they're cool people, but I went ahead and I started talking, and they said, oh, you can't think of things like that. And that's why we stopped talking. Because so what I would say tonight is so instead of what I've learned through my experience here is, instead of, Angie, you getting upset about it, we have the opportunities nowadays that my mom didn't have.
Right.
There wasn't the internet, and there wasn't groups, and there wasn't any of this stuff. That my mom would have been right in the middle of all this. I know she would have been. She would have probably had her own group, her own pay. I mean, all that for grieving moms, grieving parents. So I have other people I can tell. I don't have to hide it anymore.
Right.
And they may not be my best friend that I want to tell, and they may not be somebody I see. But when you do express something like that, whether in a group or maybe a group like we're doing right now, it can be empowering. At first, it can be just like, I had tears night after night after night after night of just typing in the beginning.
Yeah.
One type at a time. One post
I
at a
want
time.
to look at some of the comments that people are.
Sure, it's busy.
Leona Bell says, wear color purple to support.
I see that, Leona. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's good to know. I will. And so, and Sandy Day says, Barbary, my heart breaks for you. Prayers coming. She was replying to someone else Barbary, who said, I remember the rain hitting us up north that day from Katrina. So one of the things I love about our grief groups is that people support one another.
They do.
So, Sandy Day supporting Barbary, and they may not know
how this works.
But yeah, and that's what is so powerful about talking about our losses, especially in these groups. But like
I've seen people who, and it's not for everybody, but what happened has nothing to do with me, because in the grief groups I don't direct teach or anything. I just let it be and let them, naturally do their thing. So, but these ladies and all of them became good friends, and they had some things in common. And then they ended up forming some of their own groups, which was amazing. And then they ended up going, I know, 2 years in a row, I think, like to meet each other all and have a trip, sent me some pictures and, showed me that they were together. That's amazing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Now, they didn't just do it right away. Please know that
Right,
I know that those women spent some time and days and years over that before they just went with somebody. So, please be safe.
That's a collateral blessing that can come about from our losses, that we meet people who speak our lost language and we become instant friends. And the heart can love someone we've never met.
Yes.
But all we know is that they share a loss that we've experienced. Therefore, they get us. We don't have to explain.
They get it.
But I want to say, there was someone on here who said, and I want to go back to it, Carol Cebulski.
Okay.
And Carol, I can't pronounce your last name, but she says, my family doesn't understand why I'm still grieving. What can I do? May I share this link with them? And of course, all of you are welcome to share this link. But I think, family dynamics are always such a tender spot when it comes to grieving, because we're all grieving the loss of a loved one, but we all had our unique relationship with that person, and we all have different personalities.
Yes.
And so when family members seem like they're not validating our grief, it could be because, first off, they're grieving in their own way. And for some people, that means compartmentalizing. Yeah. I'm putting it in a box and putting it on a shelf.
Some people do that
because it's too painful. Mm-hmm. For others, they just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And so they don't say anything.
That's why I said that I think the first video I ever did was, so I'm not asking them to teach it, but we need to teach it is what I said, because we've got to reinvent the wheel that we had with Elizabeth Kubler. I'm so grateful to the teachers that were there with her and all her work she did for the grieving and what she could give the world. She was amazing. She empowered me as a woman.
She was an icon. But I'm glad that you brought her up, because there's something that's near and dear to my heart. Many people are still, they think that they only stages of grief or the 5 stages of grief.
Yeah, I just wrote about that and said there are no stages. Mm-hmm.
Right. And Dr. Kubler-Ross, an icon clearly in the death sciences and
Oh gosh, yeah.
behind it such. But she created that 5-stage model for people who were dying,
passing,
not the loved ones left behind.
Yep.
However, the media picked it up.
They used it. Schools did, Yeah.
They still teach it in nursing school.
Sure.
Clergy gets very little training on grief and death. But if they get any training, they're often taught the 5 stages. And it's so important for people to understand. We have an opportunity to undo what the media did to Dr. Kubler-Ross all those years ago.
Yes, she wrote a little bit in her book about that. Yeah.
And the media didn't let it go. That tells you the power of media. However, we have the voice to undo that and help people understand there are not 5 stages. There's actually different models for grief. There's a 2-stage model, the 3-stage model.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. Yeah.
And really they're all theories, but the truth is that grief is unique to each of us. Therefore,
yeah, if it's unique to me and I go ahead and write it, then it's my experience. Right. Yeah.
But the problem is subscribing to one of those theories is that, okay, so I believe that I would experience the 5 stages of grief when I lost my daughter. And my grief journey didn't look anything like that. So I thought I had failed grief. I wondered what was the matter with me. I didn't experience anger. I didn't experience bargaining. I didn't experience that kind of thing. And I kept wondering when I was going to. And of course, now, years later, I understand that model was not built for mourners.
The first time I read that, I could have just jumped through the roof.
Right. A lot of people do.
Because I went, yes. What I had already been feeling in my spirit was, I'm not, and how I do it for National Grief Awareness Day, instead of like trying to be like 5 of this or tenets or any of that kind of stuff, because everybody has their own thing. And I honor that. But as for National Grief Awareness Day, I just tried to say, okay, here's grief, and here's a lot of different things that happen. Could happen, I don't know, but this is what I'm hearing, not just from me, but I'm hearing from other people over the years. And I listen or read and hear what people go through and share some of mine. And I've just put it under there. And, that list gets longer and longer all the time. And it encompasses a lot, One of them is trauma, PTSD, depression, grief can cause that. Some of my depression that I was treating, I thought was depression, and it wasn't, it was grief. Please do not stop your meds today. I'm just saying that I had a huge epiphany with that, because I went, whoa, I never went in and the doctor never said, have you lost anybody on a sheet? Today, they're doing some of that. I'm so grateful. It hasn't happened where I live yet, but we're working on it, right?
But everything starts with baby steps.
That's
but
right.
I want to go back to the comment about my family doesn't understand. How do you get a family to understand? And I think the most important way is to just be simple and say, I just need you to listen, because when you listen, it's a gift that you're giving me, because I need to talk about my loss, because that's the only way that my brain is going to process it.
And you don't need to fix me. Yeah.
In order for us to find our footing. And if you don't let me talk about it, you're going to hinder my progress. And so you can share that with the family any which way you want. But the bottom line is, in order for us to process our loss, we have to talk about it. We have to repeat ourselves. We have to ramble. We have to cry.
The
best gift that anybody can give someone who's grieving the loss of someone they love is to listen. You and I used to say years ago, is to listen, hug, and repeat.
Simple, but hard.
Listen, hug, and repeat.
Yes.
So for the families that don't understand, you just tell them, I need to talk about it. If you can listen to me for 15 minutes every day, we'll set a timer.
Yeah.
Don't try to steer me or guide the conversation.
You don't have to fix me.
Let me just vomit my emotions verbally.
I want to add something in this when you're finished.
Absolutely. But that's the best gift anyone can give, because we have to talk about it.
Yes, we do.
That's
this is a wonderful topic.
We make sense of something that doesn't make sense.
Exactly. So, thank you for bringing it up, because, we can talk all we want on here, but we got to go home to this. And then we got to put it into our lives. And how do we do that? Well, what I can say from my own experience is there was a lot of us kids, and there was 7 of us. There, my sister passed, so now there's 6. We all went to my mom's funeral, and we all grieved differently because we all had a different relationship.
And different personalities.
And then I'm the one sister that's on the meet, and I've had, some of this stuff has been too much for the family, and they've let me know, and I have to understand that that's their, grief. But they've been kind and loving and supportive, but still we all had different stories with her. And what started out is we were able to talk with each other for a little bit, and then it seemed like we all kind of went our separate ways, and we had to do that. And so when I would talk about my mom with, let's say, a sister, I'm just going to say that, and she didn't have that relationship that I had. And she's wanting to listen to me and give me love and honor, right? But all of a sudden she starts hearing the stuff that I did or missed or whatever with mom that never happened with her. So what happens is that it hurts for her. Yeah. And so sometimes actually siblings and other families go another way. But I think with time, and what I mean by time is your own time, your grief journey. I still talk to my brother. I love him. I tell my sisters, I love them. But I had to go to other people to talk to. And even though I talk and we share about this stuff, when I asked a very close friend to help me or I need to talk, it was hard on them.
Right.
Because they weren't used to somebody like me saying, I'm having a grief day and I just need to feel this stuff. Can I talk to you? And she knew about the listening and she knew about all that. I kind of announced it a little bit all over. And then of course I was on social media, so that was even a better thing. So people saw me coming, it's kind of funny. But she did well, but I sometimes can see when it weighs heavy on another person when I'm sharing, and I have to then back down a little bit and understand that they're doing the best they can. And just like me, when I can't handle something, I back down and I back away. They too will have to do that sometimes. So it doesn't mean they don't love you, and it doesn't mean they don't care,
Right.
Yeah.
That's why we recommend setting a timer, because people often feel trapped. And they think, oh my gosh, there she comes. Oh boy, and
it's true.
And so they feel trapped. And so if you say, you know what, I'm going to set my timer or my watch for 15 minutes. If you will just listen to me, that will go a long way toward my own comfort. That will soothe my heart. It'll allow me to externalize these pent up emotions.
Yes.
And that will be good for me, because bottling them up is not good for me.
No.
So, yeah. And so that's why setting the timer, it helps people not to feel so trapped.
I love that idea.
I want to talk about some of the things that people can say that is helpful to us.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of things that people do say and they have well-meaning intention, but they actually hurt.
Yes.
And part of it is because they don't know what to say. So they say things they think will help. And a lot of those are, okay, so one of the things that people said to me after losing our daughter was, well, thank goodness you have other kids. And I remember thinking, if I chopped off your arm without anesthesia.
You just did it today, yeah.
You're agony. You're not sitting there going, oh, well, I have another arm, so I'll be okay.
I'm going to be okay. You're in the emergency ICU.
You just want the pain to stop.
Yeah.
All you know is pain from having something amputated off your body without anesthesia. That's all you know is pain. Your brain is flooded with pain. You can't see beyond it.
You used to talk about being in an ICU if a griever could be in ICU.
Yep. Of Grief United General.
Go ahead. I'll let you with that. That's yours.
To treat yourself as if you're in ICU of Grief United General, because that is what you are going through. You are going through a psychological crisis. Now, we're not talking about a mental crisis. We're talking about a crisis. A psychological crisis is another term for trauma. Okay. And that is what we're experiencing, is that trauma and a crisis. And what do we do? What do you do when you break a leg? You nurse it. You put it, you elevate it, you give it
They tell you go home and rest.
You go home and rest.
6 weeks even. Some people don't get off 6 weeks for a funeral even. They get 2 days.
Right.
You know?
And a few days is barely enough time to plan a funeral, execute it, and then figure out where you go from here. Many people think, and you've said it before, where it's like the door slams on you when the funeral ends, because people think, okay, the funeral's done, now we can get back to our own life.
And that's when it begins.
Beginning. Yeah.
That's only the beginning. When the door shuts, that's when the real thing, grief, begins, the life. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things that people say that is helpful. And I want to put these out there because these are our viewers tonight can take these comments and share them with their families and loved ones. And again, it's passing along that awareness and the education. We're all educators. We're all educators. We all have an opportunity to help future generations do better when faced with grief, because we're using our voice. You created, a platform on social media to make change for the future. And every single one of us tonight have an opportunity. So some of the things that, people will say to us, how are you? Are you okay? Well, obviously we're not okay. Obviously we're going to say, I'm okay.
It's hard with that question because I'm not okay.
Obviously we're not okay. And so a better question to say is, how is your heart today? Tell me about your heart. How's your heart? That would be a better way of phrasing it, because we all, when we greet someone in the store, we say, oh, how are you? And so with the griefer, it's an act of courtesy to say, how are you? Right. But the truth is that we're so broken, yet we're going to, just as you said, we're going to put that mask on.
Yeah.
To say we're just fine. So a better way is to say, I've been thinking of you.
Yes, I've been thinking of you. I'm here. A message with your phone number if they don't have it, to remind them.
Yeah.
And checking back in with them. Yeah.
But if you ask them,
you show your face up kind of a little bit there. You just kind of pop in and out. For a little bit, because there goes the grief fog. You're just, and you don't know what you want to do, and you don't know what you need, and you want what you want is your loved one. That's all you're wanting. When you ask it. Right. So when somebody says that, my very raw self, broken and shattered all the way, and somebody says, how are you doing? And they know they were at the funeral. God bless them. They're trying to support me, but I don't have the capability at the time with the rawness and the sensitivity that I have, the level of pain that I'm in, all I can think of is, why are you asking me that question? What do you think is wrong with me? And, and the thing is then there's that cut. And so then we don't talk to that person. So it's sensitive too, and how we approach each people differently and how we say, because what I'm learning is, each griever is so different, and what helped with some grievers in their journey did not help with the others. So here's something that's hard to do, but I had to get up the courage for my sanity. The people that I knew I could trust might have been about this big, that I knew I could say, ask them for what I need. And so I went ahead and said, hey, Liz, I knew she wanted help, but how does she help me?
Right.
How does she help me? She doesn't know what to do either. She doesn't want to hurt me. She's nervous. This is all a whole trauma thing for her as well, because she's grieving the person that's left as well. And so I told her what I needed. And I said, if I come over here and I'm just real crazy, look like I'm having a panic attack, I'm probably having what I call a grief attack. It's the same, but it's something different. And I just need to probably cry and ramble a lot. And what I've seen with my own experiences is that it ebbs and flows. I'll just blow and then it goes, and so it comes in and it goes back out, and you have that feeling it's never going to stop, but eventually it does. And I just told her, I said, and then listening would be great, because I don't need you to fix me. It's that simple, but very hard to do. So I'm just, I can give suggestions only because that's what worked for me. And I know that's a very hard thing, but I set a lot in my, untreated grief, I call it, and waited for people to do the right thing. And my silent grief got quieter and quieter, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker. I became more and more isolated. And then next thing you know, life's not looking well at any level.
Right.
And I'm mad at people who are treating me the way they're treating me. And are you going to keep doing this? When are you going to go over there? You're in self-pity, and there's some worse stuff too. I won't do that, but just those things. And so I had to take the initiative to, and what I thought was this: my mom's important enough. My loved one is important enough that I want to share. But I ain't sharing her with that person, but that person I might be able to do that with. So how about I, in some way, even if I have to send him a text because I can't say it, send him a text and say, this is what I would need from you for support if we could do that, because I trust you.
Right. Well, that brings up another statement people often say to us. They'll say, call me if you need anything. Well, the problem with that, we don't know what we need.
We don't know what we need.
We're in a fog. And so we don't know what we need. So a better statement to say would be, I'm going to the store. Do you need milk? I'm taking the kids to soccer practice. Can I take your children to?
School.
And be very specific.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need toilet paper?
Mm-hmm.
One of the number one things that people run out of, especially after a loss, because a lot of people come over between and the time of the funeral, right? And so a lot of people come over and your toilet paper gets depleted. And so you'd be surprised at how many times people say, you know what, I'm out of toilet paper. And so be specific. Don't say, call me if you need anything, because we won't call. We don't want to be a burden.
We don't even remember the phone half the time.
And we don't even know what we need. If words could fix it.
What we do need is our loved one. That's the thing we know we need. And it never leaves your brain or your heart.
Right.
One of the reasons I think that for me that I come to know for myself is that, I finally figured out that it wasn't my brain that was broke. It was my heart that was broke. And so I start communicating through there, from my heart to my mouth instead of from my head to my mouth. My brain to my mouth. So it's coming from a different place. Well, that's all new language. It's not comfortable. And there's a lot of pain surrounding it. And so when you're speaking a language of the broken, it's different. But one of my biggest things too is, don't go running over and cleaning people's houses and them not knowing, because you're trying to do a great thing. And all of a sudden that grieving person says, what are you doing here? No, you don't have to do that. Get out, And I don't want that for anybody. So it's like, that's another thing as a grieving person, I know it's hard to ask for what you need. Maybe today, since we can text, and we don't have to use the voice because it is so fragile, that we could text that kind of stuff and, and say, because there's sometimes we don't want anybody around. And then it's hard for us to tell them to go away because we don't want to hurt their feelings. Right. And you're stuck there. Yeah.
What about the statement, time heals all wounds?
I think it's what we do in the time. That's for me.
That's a statement that really bothered me for a long time. Is time heals all wounds, because I remember thinking, this pain, I don't know if I'm going to survive it. I don't know if I want to survive it.
Exactly. This is not for me.
I remember thinking very vividly, I don't want to wake up the next morning. God, take me now. Yeah. And because I didn't think the pain was survivable, but time heals all wounds. The truth is that some wounds are so deep, they stay with us for life.
Oh yeah.
And, to my mind, time softens the rawness. And that's what's happened to me, is that the time has softened the rawness. But the loss will always be there, always. And I think it's okay to accept that in society. I think one of the struggles in society is that it's hard for us as human nature to see someone in pain and we want to fix them. We don't want them to be in pain. And if we can't fix them, then we ignore them because we don't know what to do. So we just walk away because it's too painful for us to watch someone in pain we can't fix. Right?
Exactly.
And so people, they come up with these statements that they know are, they come from a place of the heart. And that's really important for us to know because it's an opportunity for us to practice grace. But it's also an opportunity for us to educate them and say,
I want to give hope tonight too.
What's that?
I want to give hope tonight too, because I know what it's like to feel hopeless with nothing. I'm going to say a hot topic here, and I don't know, I might get yelled at, and that's okay. That's how you're feeling. But I do see a lot of people in that hopelessness, and I'm not trying to fix you. When I was in the darkness, in the hopelessness, I may not have the same loss as you. And this might not be your story. But I've known some people, and also myself, that I didn't do anything when my husband passed, and my grief became very scary. And it lasted the intensity and in those first, if I look back, like right when you hear that Rex happened or whatever's happened, that moment living that moment over and over for several years. So we hear people say, I will grieve forever. I think I want you to know that I know you're going to love them forever. When we talked about my mom today and last night, I caught myself, I didn't catch myself. I cried on the interview because I miss her and I grieve her, but my grief's changed. My husband that got killed, that was in 1996. The other day I was looking at pictures. I got him out right now, and I'm getting ready to tell his story actually for the first time. But it was a tragic wreck to be in and then lose him. And so I just want people to know as well is that it's not about cures. It's not about I'm here to fix. It's not about any of that. It's about telling you that when I started kind of letting myself open up in groups, closed groups, when I started to talk, as that started to happen, and then all of a sudden one time I'm like helping somebody else all of a sudden. And I find myself helping this person and that person and this person. And I'm like, and you look back and you think, how did that happen?
Right.
But what it was is that I could have hope for you, even when I didn't have hope for myself. And it was an empowering thing.
Yeah, but when we help others, we help our own heart to heal. And I think when we give hope, in turn
when I gave some comfort, said I was listening, hugs, things like that, I found myself when I'd see somebody post something, I was right there, and a lot of others were there too. It wasn't just me. And there's some people that I know today that had started with us back in when it, all started. And I see them now and they'll message me and say, that they're doing okay. That the sun will rise, as you said. The sun will rise one day.
Yeah.
It may not be the same sun you had before.
But nonetheless, it'll still be glorious in its own way. And I think that's the thing is that, and I'm really glad that you brought up
to have grief with hope it's possible.
Well, it is. And the reason
it
is because the heart can hold joy the same time as sorrow. People don't have to choose. But in the early, months of the loss, it's hard to know that you'll feel anything but pain. And the truth is that one day it won't always feel this raw. Just like you talked about losing your husband back in 1996. When he died, you couldn't breathe. Your breath was stolen from you. Your life was stolen from you.
I can still hear that glass and the crash right now when we talk about it.
Yes, it stays with you, but rawness does soften. And that's what I want people to know tonight is even though right now you might be in the throes of grief and it might feel very dark and very bleak and like it's crushing you, but one day it won't always feel this raw.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is I have to be careful, and I caution too when I talk to people, and I've said it before, maybe not as often, but I say it too, is when you're grieving, we're vulnerable.
Yes.
And then we step into grieving groups and things like that. And your story is yours and how you are handling it. But I'm just here to say that when you're, seeing new things and people are saying things, that's fine. And that help is fine. But if you're, even my ideas, I don't want you to follow everything I say, and you won't anyway, right? But to be who you truly are.
Yeah.
Because I needed to find my truth, meaning who I am. I'm not Lynda. I'm not going to try to act like a grieving mother, pretend to know at any level how you feel, even though I had a grieving mother. That's not the same thing. So being careful when I said it's not time. We don't heal in time, because I did a lot of time and there was no healing. I just did the time. And what happened is, by the time I was ready to heal, all of that was right there. It never went away. And so it didn't go anywhere. But I do know that it's really important what I do in the time.
Yes.
So today, to know that you're not crazy, today, it's not grief. Today we can say we have a community. Today we can go and look at people who are saying maybe can speak before you can. Because I was really liking the people that were speaking already. I thought, and I would watch them and I would just be like bawling, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Right.
And I thank them today because they were saying some things I couldn't say yet.
Right.
But they were speaking my truth,
They were our voice until we found our voice.
Exactly.
And I think that's, one of the values of these groups and such is that even if someone has had a loss years and years ago, when you go in and share your story, you give other people who are earlier in their journey,
yes, I do,
hope that it's survivable.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's so important that, these grief groups are so wonderful for people.
And they're different places at different.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, is it's not just people who are fresh in their loss. It's people who are down the road who've got wisdom to share.
Exactly.
How did they survive? And
yes.
I think, when I first lost our daughter, that was one of the things that I hung on to that kept me alive, was knowing. So my maternal grandmother, who I was very close to, lost a husband and 3 children in her lifetime. And I remember thinking, how did she survive losing 3 children and a husband? And that gave me hope that if she could survive, I could too. Yes. I didn't know how. And that is what that's the gift that we give to people who are in the beginning part of their journey, is that today our life is filled with blessings and love and joy. Yes, we still have the grief in our heart, because we will always have the grief in our heart, but our heart can hold joy at the same time as sorrow. Mm-hmm. And so when you're proactive with your grief by engaging in modalities and things that are healing to you, you have a likelier outcome of having a meaningful life moving forward. Just like you said, like time heals all wounds. And you said, I just did the time and it did nothing for me.
It did me, we just sat there. Nothing changed. Yeah. The grief did not change. The grief did not change.
Right. So when you were ready again, your grief work, it was still fresh because you hadn't done anything with that time. And so
I did the work with my mom. I didn't do any work for a while. My deal was just, getting from every day was to get from the bed to the chair and to make it to a few commitments if I could do that. Canceled holidays.
Yeah.
And then I drive around with a lot of music on because I hadn't got to this point here. And then, all of a sudden, I think God led me this place. And, we have angels of my mom, my husband, my sisters up there. Yeah. Lots of loved ones that are pulling for us. I always believe that I'm going to just kind of stay with those that are in the darkness beginning, because I know people, will leave a group and they'll say, I don't know if I need this anymore, this part, but I love you or something, I love you. Thank you. I'm going to start my own thing. I'm like, good for you. That's amazing, you know, and it's not about she's cured or anything, but she did whatever she needed to work out her way in the group.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, for her, I call it a grief journey. Her grief journey has taken her to, and I've got many stories of the different things people are doing. Some of them have started pages. They started, some started the causes of how their family member died. They're involved in that. I mean, there's so many things people do. And it just blows my mind. But somebody said, how do you just stay with them in the dark? Does that not get sad? And I said, well, no, I'm sad because we have to be here. Nobody wants a grief group and a grief page, really. So, but there's not going to be a day where I say, okay, we've said enough. Now we can check out. And that's where the petition comes in.
Yes.
Because
tell us about the petition.
I have on change.org. There's a petition to, like I had said before, not a holiday, not a day of celebration, not a day of reminding us to grieve. We grieve anyway. We do education every day. These are some things that I heard and I needed to address them. It's a day of education and awareness. It's a day to stop and pause on just a, person level. It's definitely a way to pause and see first how, you're grieving, how you're doing. And then also, do I have somebody that I could talk to? How's Sam? But also it's a day for, and it's happening. We are there on that big ledge, right? Educators, doctors, nurses, therapists, you name it, coaches, they are talking the dialogue that we've needed. The language is changing. They are saying that's not right. No, I'm not going to talk. I won't be talked to that way. And it's empowering.
And so the petition will go.
See, I can get off on a whole. Thank you. She reels me right back. Angie, come here. The petition, it's been there a while. But I this year I talked a little about, for this day, I pushed it a little bit more because we really want to get to our 1 million signatures. We need 1 million signatures to take to the president. Because once we get up there closer to 1 million, then things just start happening with social media and things like that. So then other things will fall into place and hopefully we get the attention that is needed to say that this is a serious thing. I do not want it to be just this, this one, like, this is not just a overnight thing where we're going to go and say, thank you, give us a flag. And then we're going to do this. No, we're going to have to do this. I want to do this on the 30th of August, one time a year, and have it legally done for education and awareness.
Yep.
And it's for us to say, like me as an educator, to because the one thing that happens every day is death. So what happens every day is many grievers are made. Many grievers, how would I say that? I don't know if that was right. Many grievers are now experiencing the loss.
They're beginning their own journey
every day. A family of 20, and then they go home, shut the door. They've got the internet. A lot of times people go on here. So that's the thing. I don't want to ever stop doing that as an educator because there have been people here for me.
Right. But the petition is to petition the President of the United States to make National Grief Awareness Day a legal day of awareness and education. Yeah. And that's why it's critical. So if you have not signed the petition yet, to our viewers, please do. You're over 200,000 signatures now, Angie. You're getting there. And that's
what is it?
It's over 200,000.
200,000?
I thought so. Yeah.
I think it's our next goal was 2,500. Maybe we need to look. I'm sorry. I'm on my whole thing and I haven't been to the petition today.
So
if you're in that number, that's something may have happened.
So if you have not yet signed the petition, it requires nothing from you other than to just go online and take 5 seconds. It doesn't cost anything. It just means that we want to petition the U.S. government to make this a day of legal awareness and education.
Mm-hmm.
And so join us, sign the petition if you can, and help us make that a reality. And so, Angie, I want to talk about, some of the modalities that people can do to soothe the raw heart, because I think that's really, really important. The first thing
Yes.
is the grief groups. What you've created online gives people a safe place
Yes.
to share their emotions. And every night you post the nightly journal, giving people an opportunity. And again, people need to externalize. They need to articulate what's on their heart. And so the grief groups is a great modality. But I want to talk about some of them that we never talk about. Everyone says you need to sleep well, good sleep hygiene, you need to eat right, you need to drink plenty of water, stay hydrated, this, that, and the other. But there's a lot of other evidence-based modalities out there that are also very, very helpful. And I want to share just a few of them.
I would love that tonight.
Because I think that
it's important.
The more tools they have in their toolbox as they move along their grief journey,
we need resources.
They're going to find their footing for a meaningful life moving forward. And one of the things, Angie, this is one of my very favorites, is dance movement therapy. And so on my daughter's birthday, which is a painful day, and on the day that she passed, which is August 5th, I will do a 3-minute dance. Now, my go-to is Bruno Mars, Uptown Funk. And
what song is it?
It's Bruno Mars, Uptown Funk. That is my go-to.
Yes.
Find a song. So dance movement therapy is a real evidence-based modality, but you don't have to do certain steps or actually do DMT, dance movement therapy, to benefit from this. If you dance where no one's looking, you can dance where someone's looking if you want, but a lot of us are shy about dancing.
Yeah.
But it's dance in your kitchen when no one's looking, dance in the bathroom, dance in your bedroom. Put on a song that gets your feet moving and dance for 3 minutes. Most songs are around 3 minutes. And what happens with this is that it twofold. The first is that it triggers the endorphins in the brain. So you remember how the brain gets flooded with the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, right? And so when you engage in modalities that trigger the happy hormones, the endorphins in the brain, it doesn't cure the grief, but it gives your brain a respite.
Yeah.
And so when you dance, it triggers those happy hormones. And
if I dance, I laugh at myself.
Well, when I dance, my children laugh at me.
So, yeah, and I know how to sing, ask my children, but it is not good. And I make it really terribly bad, on purpose.
Dancing is something that can be done in private.
But do you know that with these things you're suggesting, honestly, I said, I don't want to do any of that stuff. This is me.
Yeah.
I'm a griever.
No, you're right.
And they would say that, right? Not what you're talking about necessarily, but they'd say those things, and I'd just be like, are you kidding me?
Right. But here's the going
they
back
did it.
To being proactive about your own grief. You said that you did the time and it did nothing. It's what you do with that time, right?
Exactly.
So because I remember too.
I pushed myself to take walks and things like that,
I forced myself to get out of bed every morning, not because I wanted to. I didn't. Yeah. I wanted to stay in bed and wait until it was my turn to go to heaven. That's
exactly.
I forced myself.
That's the truth.
And I forced myself to do things that felt good to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so dancing is one of those. And I when I teach trauma and compassion fatigue at the college, dance movement therapy is one of the modalities that I teach because I so believe in it. And I actually have the class stand up and I put on Bruno Mars on the overhead, the video, and it's amazing what happens to people because then I'll ask them after the 3 minutes, I'll say, okay, how do you feel? And it's pretty amazing. And so
there are a lot of laughs too, I imagine.
There is a
giggling
lot of
happening.
Also, it's freeing, but the second benefit of that, there's many benefits, but the second benefit is, so when you're grieving, your immune system is under duress. It's under stress especially from all the stress hormones that have overtaken your brain. They've hijacked your brain. Grief has hijacked your brain.
You are in the grief world. Your body is too.
Right, and so you suddenly it impacts your immune system. So suddenly it seems like we get ill with every cold and flu that comes around the corner, right? And
Oh,
so
yes.
the second benefit of dance movement therapy, or just dancing in your kitchen, your bedroom, your living room, is
In
the
your car,
fact
you can move
that,
can dance like this,
well, so
you
your
know.
lymph system, which is what's responsible for the lymph fluid, which takes all your white cells to counteract all the bacteria and the viruses that are your body has. And
Yeah.
so the lymph system has no pump, like your heart has its own pump. The lymph system does not. It relies upon movement of the large muscles to circulate the lymph fluid. And so dancing does that.
Wow.
You're exercising your large muscles, mainly your legs, and
Yeah.
it gets the lymph fluid
Really.
moving through your body. And so there's a
Oh,
second benefit of it.
I love
You
that.
know,
I love it when you
yeah,
share that.
isn't that cool?
I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
I won't walk everyone through it tonight, but usually when we have class and such, I'll walk everyone through it so they can experience it firsthand. Because it's
Yes.
easy to say, oh, this feels good, oh, that feels good. But unless you actually try it yourself,
Yeah.
you can't attest to it. You can say,
Right.
oh, yeah, oh, well. So so dance movement therapy is only one of the modalities that can be very useful. It can trigger the endorphins in the brain to offset
Take your
the
feet,
grief.
your head will follow later. You know,
Yeah,
your heart will follow later. I mean, really
right.
start dancing and then maybe you'll
Well,
start smiling, you know?
so
That's what
it
happened for
gives
me.
it gives your brain a break. And
Yeah.
another one that gives your brain a break is laugh therapy. Laughter is a very powerful modality for especially for grievers. And grievers are the people who least feel like laughing. They need it most.
And sometimes
And
we'll feel
so,
guilty
right.
about watching a comedy show
Or laughing.
or that I laughed. That's normal and natural to do that. And
Yeah.
I went through that whole thing. I was feeling, and I like music. My mom liked music, but to do like a real, yeah,
A good
thing,
belly laugh. Yeah.
I love Stevie Nicks, everybody.
Yes,
And
that's right.
I hope before I go to the next room in the sky, I get to see her. And so I had a lot of the songs that my mom and I shared, and I had that also to Save a Life in there by The Fray, I think it is. It was a song then that was very popular, and To Save a Life. And I would play that, and people would say, "Why do you want to play that?" Because my mom passed in a tragic way. Well, and it says, "I would have stayed up with you all night." The song says that, and that's how I was feeling.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
grieving person, I felt that, and to say I was not beating myself up would be lying.
Right. Right.
So you go through that, but what I did is it worked for me because I would do that, and I'd go driving. I used to smoke cigarettes, but I would drive, and I'd go wherever, and I would put in all that music, and the music would make me cry more. And
But it
society
releases
thinks,
the energy.
yeah, so society thinks you should do that. You'll never stop. Oh no, that's what we've been told. It's not true. I mean, if I need to
Crying is
cry from this road to next town, whatever I need to do, make sure you're safe. But that music would bring that grief out, and it would allow me to cry, and it would allow me to do that. And so I'd have that big wave come out, and then I'd play all the songs, and then I'd wipe my face off and go into the home. They'd say, "Where have you been?" I said, "Oh, I've been out driving and grieving." That's exactly what I said, because I was trying to be honest too. As I'm grieving, I was trying to be honest with my family, and it sounded weird to say it.
Right.
Even the stuff I say that we're trying to work with, I still have trouble with a friend who's had somebody passing, because just like anybody else, and so
Well,
trying to use this new stuff is new.
yeah. So driving and grieving is actually a very common thing, especially for men
Yeah,
who
I
are grieving a
know.
loss. And that feels safe to them, is to cry in their truck
Privacy.
with no one else around. And if that's what they need to do in order to release the energy, the tears,
Mhm.
music can do the same. I remember that with Allie, is at times I felt like I could feel it building up, but I couldn't release it. And so I would go into Ellie's room and listen to a song, and within 5 seconds of that song, bam. So going back to laughter and crying are yin and yang.
Yeah.
They both release energy. And the thing about laughter that is so beneficial is not only does it release the happy hormones in your brain, the endorphins, but it creates a perfect diaphragmatic breath. When you do a belly laugh, it creates a perfect diaphragmatic breath, and that diaphragmatic breath oxygenates the brain and it clears your brain. And so, people say, but I don't want to laugh. I'm feeling sad. But if you can watch, a YouTube video, maybe babies laughing or children laughing or America's Funniest Home Videos or a funny
Right.
comment, what have you, give yourself that gift to laugh, because it is good for you. It is. And it's very important. And so remember, crying and laughter are yin and yang. They both release energy, and we need both of them.
And they're good to go together, getting all the pictures out in the middle of the living room with the music blasting. It's okay.
Yeah, right, right. So another one that is super easy for people to do is chromotherapy. That's most people know it as coloring, adult coloring.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people say, I don't like color, right? Chromotherapy can be used in many ways. Color influences how we feel. And so
because the world becomes gray when the color leaves everything. Whenever that's like that grief world, the color is not the same.
It robs us of technicolor.
Yes, it does.
Shades of black and white.
There we go.
Yeah. And so chromotherapy, there's a couple of benefits to it. One of which is that the repetitive hand motion from coloring induces a meditative state, which automatically lowers our blood pressure, makes us feel more relaxed and such. But a lot of people say, I'm not into coloring. I don't want adult coloring. Okay, so there's different ways you can adopt chromotherapy into your daily schedule. You can paint a wall of a room a color that you find really soothing. You can watch color wash videos on YouTube. You can hang a painting that is in really soothing colors. You can put in colored light bulbs in your lamps. You could take a bath in colored water, create colored bubbles. There's so many different ways that you can adopt chromotherapy as a modality that makes you feel good. But going back to coloring, like adult coloring, the benefit of that is that you don't have to create a picture that's full of unicorns and rainbows. You can take a picture and color it angry colors. Use it to release whatever is on your heart. So if it's anger, if it's sadness,
if there's a snowman on there, paint that snowman black.
Right.
I mean, if I'm feeling that way, or red, because that, like I've said, there are no rules in grieving except one, and the one rule in grieving is there's no rules in grieving.
That's right.
The truth.
Yeah. So chromotherapy is really great. There's so many different modalities out there that we don't talk about. Forest therapy, that's an ancient Japanese practice. And studies have actually shown that if you go out into the greenery, into a forest, into a park, onto green grass for 20 minutes, it has a physiological effect on your body. And so forest therapy, go out and do that on your lunch break. You can do that easily. These are different, modalities that you can use that are evidence-based. Because again, I go back, Angie, you just, you said it so succinctly, is that, I gave it time and it did nothing for me, because it's just, as you said, what you do with that time. And, the truth is we want to stay in bed. We want to pull the covers over our head.
And when I'm grieving, I'm an Eeyore times a million. Eeyore is just like, and I love Eeyore, but I'm like that. And then I'm grieving Eeyore's, really, I'm not, like, okay, I'm going to go color, and it's like, I'm grumpy about it. But what happened for me was I would get really, really, really miserable. Mm-hmm. And I'd been given ideas, things to do. And I would, in my mind, say bad things and judge it. And that's my grief brain going off. Right. I don't want to do that. I don't have to do that. You're not going to tell me what to do. That's just what, I went through and what I said, and I'm editing some of that. And then there came a day. I wrote the thing about hope one time, and it was the day that it happened. Mm. But it was my experiences in life, and I literally would say, when I feel better, I'll do this or that. If these conditions come or change, basically, then I will do something. So I just said, basically, if you think about it figuratively, and sometimes not, on the side of the bed or laying in the bed, not going anywhere till things get better. Or I feel better. When I feel better, maybe I'll do that. And so what I figured out is I can do that a lot. And I did it a lot. And I became miserable with myself. You want to take your face off. I was so aggravated. And so I remember one day I went and it wasn't good, but I opened my door real fast and it was in the morning and I walked, and it was like a really mad walk. And the block was really a little block. So I was really great with that. But the whole way, almost the whole way, right? I am not having fun with this. This is not going to help me. Oh, Jesus is not helping me. Oh, this is, well, I did it. Boosh, it's, I can't believe I just did that. Doesn't mean I want to do it again. Still, the grief is there. The grief brain's there.
Grief is about baby steps.
Yeah. So I wrote about hope, and I said, I realized that, I waited for hope and it never came. And then one day I finally figured out I had to go get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what that is for everybody.
It's unique to everyone. But I remember thinking, I was walking through the belly of hell when Allie died. And I remember cognitively thinking, okay, if I'm walking through the belly of hell, I'm sure as heck not going to sit down because I don't want to stay here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to keep walking, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And, you and I have often talked about in the past about the grief dance, how one day we might be doing okay. And then the next two are really, really hard.
Yes.
And, that's okay too. We give ourselves grace on those days.
We give as friends, I say, yeah.
Right.
I need those days.
For our own best friends by giving ourselves grace on the days
when
we just can't do it. But on other days, if you think you can, give it a try.
Yeah.
Get out of bed, try something.
Yeah, if it doesn't happen today, it's, we're not saying that do this. Right. This is what has worked. And of course you're doing some teaching with trauma and they do work for people. I'm not, and everybody has their own thing, but if you try and it doesn't feel well, either, try it another day, but the number one thing is don't ever beat yourself up about it.
Right.
Because the real true thing is it's really not in the activity to me. This is my experience. It's not necessarily just the activity. It's the actual spiritual getting up, going to the car, driving to the place, setting that chair that you have for me, and picking up that pen is huge for grievers.
Yeah.
That is huge. And if I can get there, wow.
Yeah.
Because there was a day you were waiting to go home in your bed every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you get from there to now you're, teaching and doing all sorts of things, Though
the truth is that back when our daughter died, no one ever says when they're a child they want to grow up to be a grief educator, right? I mean, it's just, most of us are born from a tragedy, and we learn to take it, and we learn from others. We go to classes or whatever, and then we take that wisdom and we share it with others. Yeah. And that is one of the beauties of grief, is that it unites people. Yeah. Of all walks of life. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful things about it.
Yes.
It's something that we all experience, and we can help one another through it. And that also is hope.
Yeah.
Because if you and I can survive this, Angie, I've often said
there's hope for everyone.
Means anyone can survive. If my grandmother can survive losing 3 kids and a husband, then I can survive. And the truth is that we have a good life now. We still miss our loved ones.
Oh, yeah.
Good life that's meaningful and rewarding, and I think that that's what I want viewers to know, is that just hang on.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on, because one day you will get out of bed and think, you know what, maybe today I can face today.
Maybe I can get to that couch because there's that movie on.
Right. And then eventually you'll regain your footing on
baby steps. Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you'll be walking normal strides for you. And, life will look different without your loved one, but there's hope
So be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, you'll once again have
gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
So, all right, my love, we've been going at it for over 90 minutes.
Oh,
and
goodness.
The time flies.
Well, yeah, and I see all this conversation going on, and I want to thank everybody for coming and talking to each other and listening. And, you know, I don't know. I do have something I want to talk about real fast, then we'll zip it. I am going to begin and launch a petition launch. I don't have the name for it right now. It might be called Silent Grief is Deadly Grief.
Mm-hmm.
We want, and something like we want it to stay. We don't want it to go away. It's something like that, but it's going to be about silent grief connected to the petition so that so I can get it out there more. Because what we do on social, like for the Grief Dance folks, all done naturally. We don't pay for those things. We don't have the money for any of that. So, and we haven't had to, because, grievers help grievers, and they've helped me so many times passing things along. Thank you guys so much for that. But I'll be looking out for that, to seeing some of my stuff come out about the petition here in like about 48 hours, actually. So I'm ready to do that and try this. And I want to do it. Actually, I'm not sure. She'll tell me, probably Lynda will say, well, I don't know if it's going to be a 30-day thing. I'm thinking maybe a little longer than that, but we want to try to push for it for so many days. So,
yeah.
And I need your help to do it. Everyone's help. Yeah.
We all need to unite and work together to make it so future generations
can come out of the dark.
In the dark.
Yeah. And I'll set that's a thing. I can set in the dark with people until you're ready to find color. And I might do that only on the internet. I've done that stuff with my, friends here, and that doesn't bother me, because once you're done with the dark,
it's an honor.
Oh, it is an honor to hear your stories. It's all of those things. And so, yeah, we're trying to maybe also make a pathway for anybody coming in after us, just a little bit softer, and that they don't have to stay in that silent grief and think of taking their life because they have no hope. That's how I thought all the time. And today, that's not true. There's much hope here. There's a lot of grief here, and it's not going to stop. And I'm honored to get to be a part of it.
Well, you're an icon. And
oh my goodness.
First, I thank everyone who has left a comment. That really means the world to us. And even though we couldn't read them all during this live show, Angie and I will read them all. And all the other people who are on this will read them as well.
Yes.
So thank you for commenting, taking the time out of your life to join us tonight and being part of this bigger picture. And Angie, I just want to thank you for all that you've done. Again, for the viewers, I really encourage them to go back and read your story. It's posted probably a couple of weeks ago on Grief the Unspoken. And, your story is quite remarkable in all the losses that you have experienced and tragedies that you have experienced in life. And look at you today. You're a poster child for courage, for hope, for resilience. And I just thank you and I love you for all that you do for everyone. People who are grieving now and people who have not yet begun their grief journey but will.
They are. We got the roads coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And so everything that you do has an impact. And I thank you for that. I love you dearly. And I just think that you, everyone loves you. And because you just speak from the heart, and everything that you do comes from the heart, and that's what people need. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. We'll do it again.
Thank you, guys.
Down the road. And
we'll see you down the road.
That's right, absolutely. So everyone, have a wonderful evening tonight, wherever you are. Bless your hearts, and just know that you are not alone. We grieve together. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Angie, I love you dearly, and we'll talk soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.